Chidinma Oguntade returned to her modest Lekki flat after another uninspiring day at the firm. She'd carried the household's burdens for years, settling her parents' unpaid bills, subsidizing her brother's schooling, delivering groceries when funds ran low. Yet, no mention appeared of her in the will that her mother dispatched in secret. Letter in hand, she traced each signature with dry scrutiny, as if learning a new language. A flicker of something, betrayal perhaps, ignited behind her calm eyes. She folded the document with deliberate precision and walked away, closing the door softly on her old life. At council's office the next afternoon, Chidinma listened to Ms. Adebayo outline boundaries and rights. She absorbed terminology she had never needed before: fiduciary duty, testamentary intent, revocation clause. Her expression remained impassive as she signed formal notices, each seal snapping shut a chapter of unacknowledged sacrifice. Ms. Adebayo advised clear records, dates, amounts, correspondence. Chidinma nodded, understanding at last how to arm herself against silent expectations. When the lawyer slipped a typed letter into her folder, Chidinma's lips quirked in wry satisfaction. That evening, she drafted a list of every expense she'd covered, the sum quietly growing heavier than regret. Back in her flat, rain drummed the windows. She poured tea and reviewed bank statements, electric bills, water, internet. For years, she had treated this accounting as background noise. Now each figure felt like a tally of unseen debts owed by her family. She removed her card from autopay, cancelled streaming access. Then, with a single word, no, she texted her mother, refusing another request. Silence filled the void she created. Family voicemail logs swelled with unanswered calls. Nobody expected her to stop. Nobody noticed until obligations went unmet. And when the first overdue notice arrived, Chidinma sat back, muscles unclenched. A week later, her phone buzzed. A terse message from her mother demanding immediate payment or services would be cut. Chidinma read it without flinching. The tone felt absurd, as if she'd enrolled in a job she never applied for. She replied simply, "I'm not responsible." Then she blocked the number and changed her address in the utilities portal. The water bill's due date approached without ceremony. When a neighbour mentioned the impending shut-off, Chidinma merely inclined her head, free at last of an unpaid role she never auditioned for. Rather than brood, she proposed her own reset. She booked a solitary weekend retreat at her grandfather's lakeside cabin, land she discovered she legally owned. Earlier, a hidden deed had unveiled his final gift, concealed by her mother's will. That secret inheritance pulsed like a heartbeat of possibility. On Friday morning, she packed tools, notebooks, and tea leaves. The city's noise receded behind her as she drove north. Each mile felt like reclamation, a journey away from obligation and toward the authority over her own life. By sunset, the cabin's faded wood glowed in twilight, awaiting her careful hands. Once inside the cabin, Chidinma lit a lantern and surveyed decay: peeling paint, crooked floorboards, a leaky roof. Her breath fogged in the cool air. She set down a toolkit, rolled up her sleeves, and began scraping, painting, repairing. Every brushstroke felt like rewriting her own narrative rather than editing someone else's. On the counter, she placed an old photograph of her grandfather and herself fishing, a reminder that family could still mean affection, not obligation. As she worked, moonlight edged through cracks, illuminating dust motes like tiny revelations. She was building something of her own now. That evening, she discovered a hidden compartment in the floorboards containing her grandfather's journal. It recorded his hopes for a legacy of mutual care, not silent sacrifice. He wrote of teaching her independence and pride. Turning each page, Chidinma felt a kinship with his youthful voice, dry humour, gentle admonitions. She resolved to honour his vision. The next morning, she battered the compartment until the wood splintered, then installed new planks. Each repair echoed one more layer of self-respect. No longer caretaker by default, but custodian by choice, for the memories she cherished rather than debts she accrued. Returning to Lagos after repairs, Chidinma sensed a shift, a curious absence of familial demands. Days passed without messaging or guilt-laced pleas. She logged into her shared account and discovered her brother's transfers, small sums siphoned monthly, had ceased months ago. She closed it quietly. No announcement, no confrontation. The only stir came when her brother texted in confusion. She gently replied that her time and resources were hers now. He reacted with surprise, then defensiveness. She offered no justification beyond facts. She'd freed herself, and he could do the same if he chose to. Unexpectedly, her cousin Obi arrived at her doorstep one dawn. He'd heard rumors of the lakeside cabin and confided his frustrations. His own marriage teetered under financial strain. He wondered if a quiet retreat might help his wife clear her mind. Chidinma regarded him with detached sympathy. A new subplot unfolded. Family need meeting personal boundaries. She weighed offering shelter against repeating old patterns. Instead, she suggested an alternative. Attend a support group she'd read about. Her wry remark, "Therapy costs less than utilities," made him blink. He left with mixed gratitude and uncertainty, carrying her advice rather than her money. Meanwhile, her mother and brother attempted another refinance of the family home, but were denied. Rumors reached Chidinma, through mutual acquaintances, of financial collapse and looming sale. She felt neither triumph nor regret. She felt neutrally observant. She might help, she might not. The world spun without her decisions, and still spun. On an impulse, she wrote a letter to her mother, brief, factual, absence of blame, offering to mediate with the bank if asked. She placed it in the mailbox, then sat back with tea. The moment passed without reply, but she no longer waited for acknowledgement. Before we continue, like this video and subscribe to this channel, thank you. At the cabin, autumn leaves carpeted the porch. Chidinma sanded railings until splinters yielded. Each scrape of sandpaper sounded like the erasure of old expectations. She hung her grandfather's rusted fishing rod above the fireplace, an emblem of chosen family heritage. A photograph caught her eye, a childish snapshot of her triumphant catch beside his proud grin. She framed it at eye level and stepped back. The cabin felt transformed, not abandoned, but curated. This space, once burdened by neglect, now reflected self-governance. She poured water into a kettle and smiled at the echo of boiling, a singular, earned achievement. Winter arrived without fanfare. The lake froze at its edges. News reached Chidinma that her mother and brother considered selling everything to move south. They had not asked her. A small pang fluttered, nostalgia or compassion hard to pass. She drafted another note, an offer to split renovation costs if they committed to shared governance. She sealed it, but paused. Family history suggested no genuine commitment. Her finger hovered over the stamp. Then she tucked the letter into her pocket. Choices unmade remained empowering. She walked outside, inhaled crisp air, and allowed herself to feel neither duty nor resentment, only calm autonomy. Months later, a formal response arrived, courtesy return address, her mother's shaky handwriting. The note thanked her and admitted mistakes in handling the will. They apologized, but offered nothing more than words. Chidinma read it once, then filed it inside her grandfather's journal. She sensed closure in the act. She'd no longer crave validation. Instead, she organized a gathering of friends, chosen family, to celebrate the cabin's revival. They laughed over shared stories, toasting to independence and mutual support. In their warmth, Chidinma recognized the true inheritance, relationships built by choice, not silence. Spring thawed the lake entirely. Gold petals tickled the porch. A contractor hired by her mother but paid by her brother arrived, expecting directives. Chidinma greeted him with polite neutrality. She provided blueprints she'd drafted herself, shared living quarters, separate offices. She offered them a turnkey model to co-manage if they ever chose involvement. No guilt, no demands, just practical solutions. He nodded, impressed by her efficiency. When asked who held final authority, she pointed to her stamped deed on the wall. "Me," she said, in that same dry tone. He packed his tools, leaving her in possession of both cabin and choice. One summer dawn, Chidinma sat by the lake, journal open on her lap. She'd filled pages with reflections on duty, boundaries, and self-worth. The gentle lapping at the shore felt like applause, quiet, earned. Her phone lay silent in her bag. Her past obligations remained lines in old letters. As sunlight painted ripples of gold, she closed the journal, breathing deeply. She'd rewritten her narrative completely. No longer caretaker by default, but architect of her own legacy. And in that stillness, she realized the greatest inheritance was the freedom to choose when and whom to care for on her own terms. Like this story, subscribe to this channel and like video. Tell me in the comments section where you watched.